The afternoon sun burned over the open highway, turning the endless stretch of asphalt into a shimmering mirage. Heat waves rippled across the horizon, and the air trembled with the distant hum of engines. Then, suddenly, the deep, thunderous roar of a convoy tore through the stillness. Sleek, black luxury cars cut across the empty road like sharks slicing through water, their tinted windows glinting with power and arrogance. But just a few miles ahead, a single obstacle stood still, a massive, rust-stained truck, motionless in the very center of the lane. The lead driver slammed the brakes, tires screeching. Dust exploded into the air. The convoy came to a jarring halt. Inside that old 18-wheeler sat Tom Harris, a middle-aged trucker whose skin was weathered by years under the sun. Sweat glistened on his forehead, his hands trembling slightly as they gripped the steering wheel. His truck wasn't just carrying cargo. It was hauling crates of urgent medical supplies bound for a children's hospital nearly 200 miles away. But now, his engine had overheated, the gauges flashing red. He tried the ignition again. Nothing. Just a hollow cough from under the hood. Behind him, the convoy fumed. Car doors slammed. Voices rose. From the back seat of the lead vehicle emerged Victor Langston, a billionaire real estate magnate known as much for his wealth as for his cold disregard for those beneath him. His designer shoes crunched against the gravel as he stepped forward, irritation already written across his face. "Move that pile of junk," Victor barked, his voice slicing through the hot air. "You're blocking my road." Tom didn't respond. He barely looked up, his breathing shallow, his eyes locked on the dashboard. The old truck rattled softly in the heat. Its once bright red paint faded to dull orange. But what happened next would shock everyone watching. The Victor's security guards moved closer, barking orders, threatening fines, even jail time. A few passing motorists slowed down, pulling out their phones to record the scene. Within minutes, a small crowd had formed on the roadside. Whispered comments spread, "That's Victor Langston, the billionaire. He owns half this county." Others muttered, "The truck guy must be crazy to stand up to him." Still, Tom didn't move. His jaw clenched, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Something about his silence made even the guards hesitate. Beneath the noise and bluster, there was something else, an invisible weight pressing on him, something no one could see. Victor, growing impatient, strode right up to the driver's window. "You're done here, old man," he sneered. "Either move this thing, or I'll have it towed off the road myself." Inside the truck, Tom's vision blurred for a moment. His chest ached. He reached for a photo taped beside the steering wheel, a faded picture of a little girl in a hospital gown, smiling weakly and holding a teddy bear. A quiet whisper escaped his lips, "Just a little longer." The air thickened. Heat shimmered between them, but before anyone could react, Tom's hand slipped from the steering wheel. His body leaned forward, collapsing against the horn. A deafening blare cut through the tension, echoing across the open plains. Victor stumbled back, startled. The horn wailed endlessly, a desperate cry that made everyone freeze. "Hey, somebody do something!" Victor shouted, his voice suddenly cracking. One of the guards yanked open the truck door, but what they saw inside made their expressions change instantly. Dust whirled around the halted convoy as distant sirens began to grow louder. Red and blue flashes glimmered on the horizon, drawing closer with every passing second. And as Victor stared into the truck's cab, his anger began to fade, replaced by something else. Entirely, something he hadn't expected to feel in years. The midday sun beat down on the highway as red and blue lights flashed against the billionaire's convoy. Sirens wailed, echoing across the empty plains. Dust swirled in the air as two police cruisers pulled to a stop, their doors slamming open in unison. Officers stepped out, hands near their belts, eyes scanning the tense scene. The crowd that had gathered whispered in confusion, their earlier judgment turning into unease. Something felt wrong, terribly wrong. The lead officer moved closer to the rusted truck, calling out, "Sir, can you hear me?" No response. Only the faint hum of the truck's dying engine and the buzz of static from a radio inside. With one swift motion, the officer swung open the heavy door. What they saw inside silenced everyone. The camera pans across the driver's seat. Tom Harris, motionless, his skin pale from exhaustion, his chest barely rising. Next to him, resting on the passenger seat, A small white cooler marked in bold red letters. Critical organ transport. Handle with care. The officer froze. Then, without hesitation, he grabbed his radio. Dispatch, we have an emergency. The driver's carrying a medical organ delivery. Repeat, a heart transplant. 30 miles out from Mercy Children's Hospital. We need assistance now. Gasps rippled through the bystanders. Victor Langston, the billionaire who had been shouting moments earlier, felt his world stop. He stepped forward slowly, his face drained of color. A heart, he muttered under his breath. The same man he had just humiliated was saving a child's life, but what happened next would shock everyone watching. The officers sprang into action, barking orders. One of them jumped into the truck's cab, trying the ignition. It coughed weakly but refused to start. The radiator's fried, one officer said. She's not going anywhere unless we push her. Without hesitation, two men moved to the back, straining against the hot metal as they tried to roll the massive 18-wheeler forward. Others checked Tom's pulse. Weak but steady. Victor stood frozen for a moment, his expensive watch glinting in the sun. The billionaire who was used to giving orders now couldn't say a word. And then, something shifted in his eyes. Guilt, raw and sudden. He turned to his drivers. Get those cars in front of him. Clear the road. We're escorting this truck now. Within seconds, the luxury convoy reformed, not as a display of wealth, but as a shield. Police cruisers led the way, sirens screaming through the open highway. The once silent truck roared back to life as the officers and mechanics forced the engine forward, fumes curling into the golden air. 30 miles. Every minute counted. The camera cuts to the hospital. Surgeons pacing, a young girl lying pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Her parents wait outside, clutching hands, praying for a miracle. Back on the road, Victor's convoy flies through intersections, clearing traffic as the police wave vehicles aside. People on the sidewalk stop and stare, phones raised. Recording the strange sight, a billionaire's convoy protecting a beat-up truck. When the truck finally screeched to a halt outside the hospital, paramedics rushed forward, lifting the cooler with trembling hands. The chief surgeon shouted, "We still have time. Go." The doors swung shut behind them. Moments later, Tom collapsed against the wheel. The medics caught him just in time. As they placed him on a stretcher, a faint smile formed on his cracked lips. From down the hall, a nurse's voice echoed. The transplant was successful. Hours later, sunlight spilled into a quiet hospital room. Tom lay resting, his arm bandaged from IVs. The door opened, and Victor Langston stepped inside. Gone was the arrogance, the fury. He placed a folded check on the table, not out of charity, but reverence. "You reminded me," Victor said quietly, "what real worth looks like." Tom didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence between them said everything, because sometimes the people we look down upon are the ones holding the world together. And as Victor walked away, the camera lingered on the faded photo taped to Tom's wallet. A little girl's smiling face. The same hospital logo printed on her gown. But what Victor didn't know was that this story wasn't over yet.